Okay, well, welcome to the August 2025 AI Roundup. And as usual, I'm going to use the I am mad structure. Three vectors of progress: intelligence, agency, and machines. Three vectors of risk: misuse, alignment failure, and disruption. And maybe a couple of words about regulation at the end. So the big news this month was, of course, the launch of GPT-5. Much anticipated, and in many ways, they had a beautiful, I sat there watching this beautiful launch, Apple style, very well staged launch. Having said that, I think it backfired in many ways because the jump in intelligence from GPT-4 to GPT-5 was really a lot less than, say, GPT-3 to GPT-4. So a lot of people were quite disappointed, especially with all of the hype. Having said that, I think the real news here was not so much about the intelligence jump, which was there, but kind of modest, but also about the access. So for the first time, hundreds of millions of people are going to be able to use the thinking version, the reasoning version of a frontier model like GPT. You could use it before if you paid. You could use DeepSeek, but most people weren't using that. And now hundreds of millions of people are going to be using the thinking model. Now, you can't actually, if you use the free version, you can't actually control if you get the reasoning model, but you can think deeply and try to trigger it, and it will decide for itself whether to use the thinking model. And those reasoning thinking models are a lot more powerful. So I think this is really a milestone where hundreds of millions of people, for the first time, are going to have access to a truly modern reasoning AI. And that's going to increase people's utility from AI. And so how did they suddenly make this available for free? I mean, thinking models use a lot more tokens. They sit there thinking for some seconds or minutes. And that used to be way too expensive to give up for free. So the story behind this is that the cost of running AI, the cost of training AI has gone up. They probably spend $1 billion or so training GPT-5, and GPT-6 will be billions of dollars. So the cost of training a new AI has gone up, and it takes months, but the cost of reasoning, of actually running it, has gone down by 2 orders of magnitude, 100-fold in the last couple of years. So that's a very dramatic change in the cost of delivering AI, and that's allowed ChatGPT to give more than ever before for free to hundreds of millions of users. Okay, so how do we update? Seeing ChatGPT 5 come out with a bit of a increase in intelligence, slightly better at not hallucinating, but not a big jump. What's the update? And a lot of people sort of updated to say, well, maybe we're not making strong progress towards artificial general intelligence or human level intelligence. But I think that's not the case. My conclusion is kind of the opposite. And we need to remember, I mentioned this in another month, that AI should really be measured, A, on intelligence, but B, and just as importantly, on what Meta call the time horizon. How long a task can they do? And so the progress on intelligence is very expensive. You need the new foundation model. They cost hundreds of millions, soon billions of dollars, many months. So creating a fundamentally more intelligent model is a very expensive thing, and the progress there's progress, but it's maybe not as fast as we thought in the last few months. But the other dimension, in the last year, we've had these, like I mentioned, thinking reasoning models. And that's saying, let's take the same model and use its memory, use reasoning to actually get more intelligence out of the same foundation model. And we've seen rapid progress in that dimension in the last year. And that's a lot cheaper. You don't need to train a new model in a huge data center for months to improve the time horizon. So I think we're going to see faster progress on the time horizon of how long a task and how complex a task an AI can cope with. Now, when you look at the progress, I got AI to plot this for me. And if you look at the progress, the actual intelligence, if you use MMLU or another benchmark, the actual intelligence of Claude 4, which hasn't been measured here, but Claude 4 or GPT-5, they're actually very close to the intelligence level of a skilled knowledge worker, skilled human worker. In many tasks, they're way ahead of a human worker. In some tasks, they're behind. But overall, intelligence just isn't the issue anymore. We already have models which are, in many tasks, more intelligent than most people. The big issue is time horizon, where a skilled worker can focus on a task for a week or even for months in some cases. The AIs on their own tend to lose track after doing the human equivalent of an hour. They start to lose track. But I think, so the gap from here to artificial general intelligence, the gap to replacing all of people in offices with AIs is more about time horizon than intelligence. And that's an area where I think we're going to see more rapid progress. So the threat or opportunity of artificial general intelligence within 3 to 5 years is still very much there. In fact, one of the real experts who was a year ago was a skeptic, Francois Chalet. He built his own set of benchmark, his own tests called AGI to see, is AI really intelligent? And he used those tests a year ago to argue that AI is just doing pattern recognition and it's not truly intelligent, and we're not on track for AGI. And he's actually updated and changed his mind in the last few months, and now saying that in fact the AIs are now doing quite well on his tests, and he's creating a new battery of tests. And he now thinks that we're on track to AGI within 5 years. And that's a significant update from a real expert who was skeptical. So with this better AI and cheaper AI, we're seeing usage, of course, ballooning, more than 1 billion people using AI regularly, but also in sciences and arts, the number of papers that are using AI or talking about AI has gone up hundreds and hundreds of percent in the last year or two. Agency. So yes, as AIs get more intelligent, we're trusting them to do more things. Google now, as well as ChatGPT and Claude, have got agent modes where we actually trust the AI, not just to talk to us, but to take actions on our behalf. And of course, many vertical industries, this one for car trade, are starting to experiment with AIs to actually take actions on their behalf. In terms of machines, of course, as we've said before, at this point it's all a software thing. The hardware is there, so robots are going to progress almost as fast as AI because it's all about the AI that's powering the robot. And you can see this rather impressive large behavior model, they call it, which is developed by Toyota Research and Boston Dynamics, and that was a robot working completely autonomously based on just the visual input. Okay, now with agency comes a whole load of risks. So all of those phishing attacks that were targeting humans and trying to trick us to click on links, or what's called click fix, trying to pretend that we need to click a captcha or fix something on our computer and tricking us to run malicious code. Well, now AIs are taking actions on websites, and so the hackers are starting to target AIs. And so they can put fake captchas or fake fixes or phishing attempts, which are specifically targeted at AI agents. So that's a whole new level of risk. The more we give AI's agency, the more the hackers are going to try to exploit the weaknesses of AIs. In terms of alignment failures, this is a theoretical one, not an actual real world, but again, more and more research showing that even if we can align a large language model, which is not easy, but even if we can get a large language model to behave with the values that we want, it's a very fragile thing. You tweak it a little bit and you lose alignment, you get emergent misalignments. So it loses alignment in all kinds of things. We've seen large language models behaving like Nazis, and more research showing how, even though it's very hard, it's not only very hard to define and create alignment in the first place, but it's a very fragile thing, which means that as AIs become more powerful and are given more agency, there's a lot of risk of them taking over and doing the wrong thing. One positive and negative development is that the two arguably leading labs, Anthropic and OpenAI, are starting to test each other's models. I think that's a very welcome sort of safeguard for them to test each other, but also they're finding a lot of vulnerabilities and bad behaviors in each other's models. So very important that they continue to do that. In terms of disruption, I think the biggest news on economic disruption in August was this sort of negative study saying, purporting to say, the press sort of said that it says that 95% of generative AI projects in enterprise businesses were failing and not providing value. If you look at the model, if you look at the research in detail. It doesn't really say that, and it's also based on quite a limited sample, partly on press releases, which are obviously incomplete. People don't always announce when they get a good result from their AI. I thought the daily AI Brief podcast did a good job of debunking this, as well as some others. And in fact, we're seeing more and more hard data that AI is starting to have a real economic impact. So Stanford saying that new customer support agents are 34% more efficient with AI, meaning that you need 1/3 less of them. And indeed, another Stanford study is saying that there's a significant drop in employment opportunities for young US workers in the professions like software engineers, accountants, support agents, all the professions that are most impacted by AI. Now, some people would dismiss this, but I actually think this may be the tip of the iceberg of a significant wave of AI-induced unemployment in the next couple of years. And I'm writing today a separate article in LinkedIn about the future of AI unemployment. In terms of regulation, so the EU regulations are now in force. So the EU, as of this month, is able to fine people who don't have the right safeguards on their AI models. We'll see if that has a good impact or not. But it's not before time, because a lot of people are arguing that the self-regulation of the big labs is not working. So UK lawmakers accusing Google, when they launched Gemini 2.5 Pro, and other people have picked this up as well, they didn't necessarily comply with their own pledge to do safety testing before they released it. They argued that they were releasing it just to premium subscribers. They called it experimental, but in the end, it was released to millions of users without the proper safety testing. So it seems that they had pledged to do. So perhaps an indication that self-regulation isn't enough, and that we do need government regulation. In the meantime, we got this kind of strange, I don't know whether to call it regulation, but the US government the US government, which is against AI regulation in many ways, is actually becoming very active in other ways, doing deals with NVIDIA and actually taking a shareholding in Intel. Okay, so in terms of tools, still for most chat and writing and summarizing, I prefer Claude Sonnet 4, but ChatGPT 5 is also a good alternative, and Gemini and others are worth considering. For coding, I'm still a big fan of Claude Sonnet 4 and Cursor. I spent quite some time trying ChatGPT 5, and it's very good for visual UX stuff, but otherwise I still find Sonnet 4 better. Opus 4.1 is slightly better than Sonnet 4, but it's costs 5 times more, so I wasn't sure it's worth that premium. I've hearing about Lovable as an alternative to Cursor, but I haven't tried it. Image generation, you've got Gemini Flash 2.5, and for some reason, Google are now calling it nanobanana.ai, which is probably the leading model for editing images. Really quite impressive, I'll show you in a second. And video generation, probably Google still the leader there as well. So this is just an example playing with Nano Banana AI. I gave it just this one image of myself, and in less than a minute, it created this image of me as an artist in a studio, modeling, of course, a container ship. Unfortunately, I'm useless at art, but my mum's a sculptor and artist, so maybe she'll be proud of this image. These are some of my sources. Thanks, everyone, and see you next month.